All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk. My name is Spencer, and in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about school. I've been surrounded by school kind of my entire life. Both of my parents are teachers. Both sets of my grandparents worked in schools. I've been in school since I was about 5 years old, being a part of that whole Western culture. Kind of everybody my age has either been in school, gone through school, or is going to school, like post-secondary. So school is definitely a very important part of life, and I do have a couple of things that I kind of wanted to talk about in regards to school. So I did a video not too long ago, I think it was about 5 or 6 months ago, about education as a whole. And in that video, I kind of, crapped all over the education system. And I feel that my feelings towards school weren't properly conveyed in that video. So I just wanted to touch on that topic again in this podcast, and also give you guys a little bit of an insight as to what I am doing in school and why I'm choosing to change my path in terms of, post-secondary schooling and whatnot. So we're going to get started with what I find incredibly beneficial about school. So school, of course, it teaches you like math and English and social studies, and it teaches you history and geography and all that stuff. That's all really important. That's all information that every human being should have. Like, we should know why Canada has a prime minister. We should know why the US has a president and why they're in office for a certain amount of time. We should know how the laws in our countries work and why the laws were created in such ways. We should know about our history so that we don't repeat the same mistakes that we made in the past. But there are a lot of things that have to do with school that aren't all taught in the classroom that I find very important. So things like social interactions. I was a fairly, I wouldn't say shy kid, but I was reserved. Like, I never really had a big group of friends. Whether this was by choice or by me being extremely weird, that is still to be determined. But the whole social aspect of school really changed how I am as a person, and I'm pretty sure it changes how a lot of people are. In the fact that, you walk onto that playground when you're young, and you have to introduce yourself to a complete stranger. Like, you have to go up to a random kid and be like, yo, I think you look cool. Do you want to be my best friend forever? And if they say yes, you guys become BFFs. And like, it's a weird way of life in school that you can't really find anywhere else. Like, if I were to go up to some random guy on the street just because he has the same t-shirt as me and be like, hey man, do you want to be best friends? He would look at me like I'm a psychopath. But when you're 5 years old and you're in kindergarten, that's totally acceptable. And I do believe that that is a tremendously important part of life. Not to diss kids that are like homeschooled or whatever and they don't get to have those interactions, but I do think that they're very important because they teach us, when certain things are allowed to be said. Like, if you're talking about somebody, you don't want that person to be right next to you. And I do think that a lot of those experiences and a lot of that learning happens in school. Take like teasing, for an example. Like, I was teased quite a bit in school because I was always the small kid and I was always really skinny and I was like the blonde English kid in a French school, and so I would be teased a lot. And it wasn't until like the second or third grade that the kids wouldn't tease me to my face. They would like talk about me amongst each other, and like when I would walk up they would stop. That's something that I find you develop a lot more in school than you would in like, if you were homeschooled. Now, this isn't to say that homeschooled kids are super socially awkward, but just, I don't know, sometimes they are a little bit. But skills like that are quite important when it comes to like, working a job. Let's say you work in a retail store and you're complaining to your manager about how a customer's being really mean, and then that customer walks up to you, you're going to stop talking immediately. You're not going to just continue talking to your manager. And I find that that's a skill that, being in an environment with a lot of people helps to develop that. I don't know if this rant at all is making sense, but I do find the social aspect of school quite important. But also, it's also, yeah, that's English. But also, it's totally irrelevant. Like, the day I graduated was the day that I like spoke my last words to 90% of the people that I graduated with. A couple of them I've met up with since. Like, I've got two or three friends that I'm going to school with next year that I'm going to be able to see them a whole bunch. And I've got a couple of people that, I've worked with, or um, we've met up just by chance, but I haven't held any of the interactions that I had in high school with any of those people, like, since high school. Developing cliques and stuff in school, as great as that is, and you can have your group of friends or whatever, and sometimes that moves along into later in life. Like, my dad is a perfect example of that, where him and his group of friends were best friends in the first grade, and he's in his, like, he'll be 50 this year, and he's, still best friends with that group of five guys. And of course, their group has expanded and they've found a lot more friends, but that main group is still a huge part of his life and is a huge part of my life. Like, one of the guys that he was friends with when he was in school is now my godfather. And I find that really funny that his high school and school life changed his life so drastically, whereas mine, in terms of friends and whatnot, didn't change it at all. Like, I don't really talk to any of the people I went to high school with anymore. And that's kind of varies from person to person. I really think that if you have a really good group of friends in high school, you can live on with those people. But, if you're kind of reserved kind of to yourself, the people that tease you in high school or whatever, or the people you don't get along with in high school, just keep in the back of your mind that once you're done, you're never going to have to see those people again. And high school is a social war zone, as much as it is a learning space to learn about social interactions and to learn about just education and knowledge in general. It is also a terrible place to be if you're not a popular kid. I never was a popular kid. I knew everybody's names. I got along relatively well with everybody, but I didn't have a ton of friends. And that was something that it didn't bother me a ton. Like, it did bother me because, innately humans want to be accepted and loved. And I mean, so sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And sometimes, you just got to stick to yourself and don't be a pussy about it. But I often was, where it was like, why doesn't nobody like me? I don't understand. High school is definitely terrible for that. There are the assholes that think they're on top of the world. But just believe me that those people will end up at the bottom. If you are a nice person, and if you stick to your morals, and if you live a decent life, you will never ever have to worry about friends, because the friends that you do make will be people like you. Whereas trying to fit in with the popular kids at school will only make you lower yourself down to their standards. And oftentimes the really, I'm going to air quote this, like, popular kids are just not the greatest people. And this isn't to say that popular people can't be good people. My student council at my school, my high school that I was at, was run entirely by what you could call the popular group of kids. And they're all awesome people. And they're all going to lead extraordinary lives in the future. They just kind of didn't click with me in the way that they clicked with each other. And that's totally fine. But, as I said before, high school is over as soon as it's over. And it's totally up to you as to whether or not you want to continue those interactions. And as much of it, what am I saying? As much as it is a great space to learn about, how to interact with people properly, it is also just a finite amount of time and space. Like, you don't have to be there for the rest of your life. And once you've learned what you got to learn, you can get out of there. Which then leads me into my next topic. I don't know if that made any sense. I was kind of all over the place. I'm sorry if that didn't make any sense. This podcast is still a learning process. Um, I'm gonna have to learn to filter because I just kind of blabbed for 10 minutes straight. I don't know if that's okay, but we're gonna keep rolling with it into the second topic that I wanted to talk about, which is post-secondary. So once you've gone through high school, once you've done all of the things that you need to do in school, um, you're faced with the opportunity and the possibility to go into another school, which either whether that be a university, a college. I mean, there are some like online places that you can go to, whether it be like a private academy or a local college. There are so many opportunities to learn after high school. Don't ever think that school has to be this mandatory thing from 8 till 4 every day where you get on the bus and then you hate your life and then you get home and you hate your life and then you do homework and you hate your life. Learning doesn't have to be a burden. I've learned that recently with going through university and stuff like that. That learning is entirely up to you, and that's one of the problems that I talked about in my education video that I have since deleted. Was that the only issue that I have with our school system is that you can't really decide what you learn. You have to take your 5 base subjects, whether it be language arts, math, science, social studies, and then, well, I guess I had 5 because I was in French, so French was mandatory. But you always have to take like those 4 basic ones, so like English, science, math, social studies, and then beyond that, you can take like option classes in high school and stuff. But like, if you're a kid that's only caring about music, like I believe that once you get to like grade 10 or the 10th grade, you should be allowed to pick a little more of your schedule. Um, like in university, once you're in, you can take whatever classes you want, and that's at the same time that it's a good thing, it's a bad thing because like I was a film student taking a geography class because I needed a filler class for science credits, but it had literally nothing to do with my degree, but I still did a geography class. So I think there should be some limitations to the freedom of choice of classes, but I do think that high schools should try to shift towards a more open schedule. Whether that be like if a kid is interested in music, they can maybe take more music classes than math classes if they don't like math as much. Or if they like math more, they take more math and less science, or more English and less social studies. It's an idea that I've thought about for a long time, and it's like I have no idea how the education systems could execute that because there are only a certain amount of teachers and only a certain amount of time in every day, and there's no way that you could accommodate to thousands of students that all have different interests and different schedules to get that to work. Like if the math kid wanted to have 6 hours of math a day, but the music kid didn't want to do any, how could you accommodate that? How could you have teachers for that? And I think that's totally something that could be worked on and changed in the future. Like our education system, has been relatively the same since it was created. Now I'm talking about the Canadian and especially Albertan system. I know that in Canada, education is decided upon in a provincial manner. So like all 10 provinces are different in terms of the education. So I'm talking like where I live, this is how it is and how I think it could be different. But like our education system hasn't changed a ton since it was created. I mean, yeah, we don't use chalkboards and the strap anymore, but it's always been person in charge standing at the front, lecturing to the students, reading out of a textbook, sometimes drawing on the board. And it's always been kind of the same basic topics always being taught. And that last bit of the same things being taught is kind of bipolar, where it can be a good thing because, those are the things that need to be taught to every single generation. But at the same time, when are we going to move forward from, teaching about the War of 1812 instead of teaching kids how to balance a checkbook? That's another thing, is like I don't know how to, like, what's a mortgage? Where do I get one? Is like, do I just go to the store and be like, yeah, I'm gonna buy this house, thanks? Like, I'd that's one thing that school, I think, could, I don't know, change, improve upon. I have no say because I'm just a kid. I'm a cog in the wheel, but I feel, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that, as phenomenal as education is, and the fact that education is available to anyone, like, so long as you live in a city where there are schools, you have access to school. And I know for a lot of people, financially, they can't make it to university or whatever, but like, there are so many free sources to learn. Learning is such an important part of life. I just think that there could be, I don't know, possibly ways to streamline learning or to modify it in such a way that helps people become the best version of themselves that they could be. Uh, if you want to learn about music, you should be offered every opportunity to learn about music. Um, at the same time that you should be offered every opportunity that you need to excel in math and stuff like that. But that's a discussion for another time. I don't want to get too in depth in the ins and outs of school. But let's get back to the whole post secondary thing. So when I graduated, I was faced with the decision of, where am I going to go for post secondary? What do I want to do? And it wasn't until I think it was the week before registration opened. Sorry, not registration, but uh, admittance opened. So, like, you could make a request to be admitted into programs, and it was like a week before that I really started to think, like, what do I actually want to do with my life? Because I've been through 12 years of school and I've been kind of okay at everything. I was never incredibly good at math or science or social studies. I was pretty good at English. I really like to read and write, but I always thought to myself, like, authors and people that read and write for a living, like, that's a niche group of people. You can't just do that. Apparently you can, and I'm just an idiot, and I should have looked into that a little more before making my school decision. But I immediately went to the U of A, so the University of Alberta's website, because that's where my parents went to school, and that's like the best, air quotes, university in the Edmonton area. So I just thought, why not apply to get into there, so that I have the best opportunity to learn the best things that I can, because that's what everybody's opinion is about the university, is like, go to university, that you'll get a better education than you would if you go to a college. Not at all true, but that's kind of the common opinion. So I applied for, my first application was actually for a major in computer science, because I've always been like a computer nerd. I've always been the techie kid. Like, if ever there's a problem in the family with a printer or a TV or anything not working, I'm always the first person that they ask. My grandma has me on speed dial. Like, if ever she has a problem with her iPhone, she just calls me up, and then I go over there and I help her figure it out. So I've always been like the techie kid, and I thought computer science was definitely the thing for me, because I've built a computer, I've coded, I've done some programming, and that's part of the reason why I love cameras so much, is because you can tinker with them. Like, you can change lenses, you can change settings, you can make them really your own, and that's something that I really love to do. And so I thought computer science was the perfect fit for me, and so that first application was a major in computer science and a minor in creative writing, because I've always wanted to be an author. I've been writing a book series since I was 13 years old. It's been 6 years, and I'm done the first book. But like, the first probably 70 to 100 pages of that book were written when I was in middle school. So the grammar is all terrible. There's too many commas. There's so many undescriptive words that I need to go back and change it. But I had chosen a creative writing minor because I love to write and I love to create stories and build worlds and whatever. And so upon realizing that and thinking, computer science would be great, but I had to have a higher science average to get into that program. And I didn't have the highest marks in science. Like, I wasn't failing any of my classes, but I didn't have like high 90s in any of my science classes. So then I decided as my second admission, I would put a major in film studies and a minor in computer science, thinking that, I play a lot of video games. Wouldn't it be cool if I could be a video game designer? And that way I could, do some storytelling. I could do some filmmaking if I wanted to. I could do some stuff related to computers. And so that was the second application that I put in, and that was the one that I got accepted into almost immediately. I think it was a day or two later, I got the email saying that I had been accepted into that program, because the admission requirements were much, much lower, and you didn't even need science to get into film studies. So I took that immediately, thinking that even if I don't get the other one, which was initially what I thought I wanted more, was a major in computer science, at least I would have my foot in the door and I would be able to go to the U of A, whether it be for first year in film studies and then to maybe transfer into computer science, or to hopefully potentially change, after the first year. Or to just like continue with what I had originally planned and just do film studies and computer science all the way through. So then came time to pick my classes, and I sat down with an older cousin of mine who was at university, and she taught me about, how to pick classes, how to put things into my schedule, how to make sure that I had a certain amount of credits and a certain amount of classes. And making that schedule made me realize how limited high school had been, and really opened my eyes to the possibilities of learning. Like, I accidentally enrolled myself into an astronomy class because I've always been fascinated with space and stuff. But it turns out that astronomy class required physics, and I didn't even do physics in high school. So, yeah, I had to drop that class on the first day, and then I had to switch into, I think it was philosophy, because it was the only open class. But anyways, that was kind of the moment that I realized that, high school, I was not at all ready for university. I thought I was, because I thought it would be exactly like high school, and I would just show up and do 4 classes all in the same building and then go home and whatever. But no, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I only had 2 classes. And that was mind-boggling to me. Like, I showed up and I was like, what? I have 4 hours of free time before my first class? So then I like explored campus and whatever, and I started the vlog series. But then I started doing my classes, and I realized, like, this is weird. Like, why am I learning about ancient Roman philosophers when my major is in film and my minor is in computer science? And I think it was about halfway through the summer that I had decided that film was a lot more interesting to me as a career prospect than I had originally thought. Originally, I had enrolled in that because it was like, oh, film studies, that sounds cool. Excuse me. But it turns out that I really enjoyed filmmaking and whatnot, and then I started like the YouTube channel, and I thought it was great, and I had kind of given up the hope of being a major in computer science. And then about halfway through first term in university, I realized that computer science wasn't for me. I was being taught a made-up language in which that I had to then create programs to render out little games that made no sense to me, and I didn't catch on as quickly as a lot of the other students did, partially because the high school that I went to didn't offer a computer science class, so that I had no possibility to, get a bit of a head start, whereas a lot of these other students that were in my class had done computer science previously, and they had a little bit of an edge over me, so I felt like I was behind from the get-go. Um, and then I remember my lab partner was like this crazy computer whiz. Like was he was first year and he was a major in computer science, but he had gone to the second largest high school in Alberta, which is called Harry Ainley, and um, or sorry, no, not Ainley. He went to J. Percy Page, I think. Is that I can't remember. Anyways, he went to one of the biggest high schools in the province, and there he had done an entire semester with two computer science classes a day, where like he was worlds ahead of me, and we weren't at all on a level playing field. So when it came to our assignments, I did all of the writing. Like I wrote out the design for the games, I wrote out the storyline, I wrote out, the assessments of what we were going to need to do, what we were going to do to accomplish it. Um, and then I would write like the debug and the bug fixes and all of the non-coding parts of the writing. That I did all of that, and he made the game. Like when it came to the workload, we did about equal, but when it came to the creation of the game, he did 100% and I did next to nothing. All I did was like make the art. And that was when I realized that computer science was not for me. So I changed my minor about halfway through first term, and I changed it to creative writing because I decided if I'm going to be in film studies, I'm not going to half-ass it. If I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a filmmaker. I don't just want to be, I don't want to hope to one day get a break and make it as a filmmaker. You have 1 in a million chance of that happening to you, where it's like all the stars align and everything goes right, and then finally you get your lucky break and you make it to Hollywood. Most of the people that end up as, professional actors or writers or directors or anything like that, it isn't just handed to them, and they have to work hard at it. And so I decided, if I'm going to be doing this, if I want to go into the film industry, I can't half-ass it. I can't have my mind split on computer science and film in the hopes of maybe being a video game designer. No, if I want to be a filmmaker, I got to go hard at it. So I decided to change my minor to creative writing because that was something that would be extremely important to filmmaking. And I finished up the semester with relatively high marks. Like I still aced that computer science class because my lab partner was so great and he helped me out so much that I did much, much better in that class than I was expecting to. But then things just kind of went downhill from there. I finished up first term, and then I just stopped making movies because I slowly started to notice that my film studies classes had nothing to do with the creation of films. It was all the analysis of films. So the first film class that I took was Film Studies 101, and that was like introduction to film. It was for the people who had literally never seen a movie in their entire lives. Like, she explained what frame rate was, she explained what different aspect ratios were, she explained, what different genre of film were. And I thought that I was all very interesting and that it would potentially lead into us creating films using all the different things that she talked about, but we didn't make anything that term. So I thought, okay, maybe second term is when I'm going to start making stuff. Second term rolls around and I was in 2 different film courses, and they were both film history. So I was thinking, okay, maybe we'll like analyze a film from 1920 and then try to recreate something like it. No. Our assignment every week was to watch a movie and to write a paper about it. So I thought, okay, that's weird. Why am I in a film? Like, why am I a film major, but I'm not making films? So I went up to the film studies and the English and film studies office in the U of A, and I went and talked to a counselor, and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to be a filmmaker. I want to make movies. I don't want to analyze movies. I don't want to sit here thinking about movies. I want to go out and make something. What should I do? And the coordinator for film studies also happened to be one of the film studies profs that I had in my first semester. So, of course, she immediately said, the best thing for you to do is to finish your degree here at the U of A, because then you'll have an advantage where it's like, you know, all of the theoretical things about movies, and then going out to make them will be so much easier. And while I do agree with that to a degree, it's also like there's only a certain amount of stuff that you can teach me before it becomes a specialization. And so later that day, I went home and I looked at the courses that I would be taking in the future. So I looked at like second year, third year, fourth year. Second year was all genre specific. So it was like you would do one semester on science fiction films where you would only analyze science fiction. And then another semester was dedicated to animation and you would only watch animated films. And then third year was like a mix of like gender studies and racial studies and like how film has shaped culture and pop culture and whatnot. And while all of that is interesting, it is all information that I could just get on Google. Making movies is not something you really need to go to school for. And the more I thought about it, the more it was like, okay, I'm going to be sitting in a classroom watching a movie that I don't care about, only to write a paper that I'm not going to care about, and then get a piece of paper at the end of it that says that I'm good at analyzing movies. That's essentially what a film studies degree is. And this isn't to say that people that are in film studies don't deserve that piece of paper. Like, I've got a friend. I will link his Instagram page in the description below, because he has taken film studies into a complete different direction than I ever could, where he's become a film critic and he just takes the movies that he watches and he criticizes them on Instagram. And he does a phenomenal job because he's so invested in the study of film, not the creation of it, the study of it. As an art form, he analyzes it and does so many things that I could never do with analysis. And he creates some of the most enticing and incredibly well-written reviews on Instagram. I will link him in the description below. I cannot say enough good things about his reviews for films, but that's not at all what I want to be doing. And that's kind of the dichotomy between film studies and film school. Film studies is the analysis and the criticism of films. I say if you want to be a screenwriter or a critic, or even maybe if you want to be a director and you just want to have every edge possible, I would say do at least a couple of courses in film studies, because yes, it is very interesting to learn about everything relevant to film studies, but it just wasn't for me. As a creator or as a maker, I would suggest going into something more, practical. Film studies is very theoretical, where it's you watch a movie, you analyze, how this shot was framed and what that means in the story, instead of, going up and setting up a camera and creating a shot. It's very theoretical. I don't think I touched a camera besides working on my own projects at all while I was at the U of A. So I decided to completely do a 180 and go to a local college called the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, or NAIT for short. And there they have what they call their radio and television broadcast program, which at first I was like, okay, broadcast, that is not what I want to be doing. Like, I don't want to sit in a radio booth and like talk to a microphone, even though that's exactly what I'm doing right now. As a career prospect, that didn't sound super enticing to me, but I looked into it because I did research, which I think if I would have done that research coming out of high school, if I would have sat down and just really thought, like, what do I want to do with my life? And then, researched all of the different possibilities, I think I would have found this program sooner, and maybe I would have gotten into it earlier. Maybe I wouldn't have, spent an entire year at the U of A essentially wasting time. Not at all that my time at the university was wasted. I learned a lot. I met a lot of really good people. I wrote some really awesome papers. But I don't know. It's just I didn't learn what I wanted to learn, and that comes back to the whole. I believe that people should be able to learn whatever they want to, and so I decided, let's. I'm gonna look for something different. So then I found this radio television program, and I looked into the television side, and um, it seemed enticing. I didn't know for sure what it was, so then I checked around a little more. I thought of maybe going into photographic technologies at the same school where it's an entire 2-year program just on photography. And I thought, that would be awesome, but at the same time, I want to do video more than I want to do photo. And also, all of the rules of cinema apply to photography. So, what really would be the difference in getting a diploma in photography versus a diploma in videography? So then I looked into their digital media section where they have like a digital cinema diploma, and it was kind of the same thing, but it was again computer science, and I wasn't sure about that. So then I came back to this TV thing and I looked at it more in depth. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized that it was the perfect program for me. And this is something that I really think high schools and institutions should really push, is when a kid is going to select what they're going to do for a degree, a post-secondary degree, I think the information should be more readily available. It's entirely my fault that I didn't do the right research to go into the U of A. I didn't sit down and think, like, what classes do I want to take? What do I actually want to do with my life? Instead of doing that, I just thought, like, no, it'll all the information will be there when I get there, and it wasn't. I think that if this information of, like, how courses operate or what the degree will actually get you, if that information is more readily available, I think there'll be less kids like me that spend a year at the university and then decide to change to a completely different school or just drop out entirely, which then loses not only the institution money, but then loses the student time and money. And I don't know. I just find that if there was a little bit more guidance in terms of the choosing of a path, I think that would be beneficial. Now, there are, of course, things that you can do to get guidance. Like, there are guidance counselors everywhere. Like, you go to your counselor at your local school. Sometimes they won't know exactly what you want to do. Like, I went to my counselor at my high school and I told her, like, I want to go into film, and she didn't know what to tell me because she knew nothing about film studies, which is understandable because not everybody will. But there are guidance counselors at the universities themselves, and they're open to everyone. You don't have to be a student to go there. Like, I was a university or U of A student, and I went to Nate and I talked to a counselor, and, like, I didn't even need to show ID. I just asked my questions, and she was like, yeah, cool, come back if you have any more questions, see you later. Like, it's not at all, it doesn't have to be daunting, but I think to a lot of people, you think universities just, no, I'll get it done and I'll do it myself. But there are resources out there where you can go talk to people. But I think that, with my generation being as lazy as it is, and I'd like to talk about the laziness of my generation in a future podcast, is that, that information should almost be more readily available. I totally understand that university has to be about singularity, and it has to be about like autonomy. And if you're not gonna do the work for yourself, like, nobody's gonna do it for you. But at the same time, I feel like if things were laid out a little bit easier for us, it would make decisions of what our careers are going to be and what our class choices are going to be a little bit easier. So anyways, I'm totally sidetracking. So then I decide to do this radio television program because it seems perfect for me. There are classes on camera operation, on studio production, on dramatic production. Like, this sounds like the perfect program for me. And I don't know where this will lead me. Maybe I'll be making another podcast exactly like this one a year from now, talking about why I shouldn't have done the program that I did. But I do believe, coming back full circle to what I said at the beginning, that school, not only is it important because you learn things uh, about history and about math and whatever, but you also learn things about life. If I hadn't done my time at the U of A, I wouldn't have met certain people. If I hadn't, this is cheesy to say, but if I hadn't gone to the university, I wouldn't have taken the bus that takes me from my town to the nearest train station. If I hadn't taken that bus, I wouldn't have met my girlfriend. And everything in life happens for a reason, and I'm never ever going to look back at my time at the university or my time in high school and have bad memories of it. I will always look back at these moments and cherish them for what they gave me, instead of getting angry at them for what I didn't gain from them. I think that's about going to wrap it up for today. This is a lot longer than last week's podcast, which I think this will be about the length, like half an hour to 45 minutes, maybe an hour if I start ranting or if I have a guest with me. But I'm fairly certain that this is going to do for this week. Thank you guys for listening. If you stayed till the very end, if you stayed to the very end, leave a comment in the comment section below that says potato. I just want to see how many people actually make it to the end. Anyways, thank you guys. Oh, excuse me. Thank you guys for listening, and I will. Oh my God, excuse me. Thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you all next week, where we are going to rank all of the Marvel movies from 19 to 1. Thank you guys for listening. See you next week. Bye-bye.